Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the group. I hope it's 6:30. I've yet again got that issue where the phone and the computer says a different time. Welcome to our second Facebook Live this week on contract basics. It was lovely to have everyone with me on Monday. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being so enthusiastic. I hope we've got some people coming along this evening joining us. If you are joining us, could you, down there in that bottom right hand corner, there's a little blue thumbs up. Give us a little thumbs up to say you're here. Hi Liz, nice to see you here. I'm not going to name check everyone because it's really, really difficult as it pings up. But if you are joining us, you are very welcome. If you are joining us on the catch up, you're just as welcome. Again, the blue thumbs up at the bottom is really helpful to know who's around, who's watching. And we'll be delighted if you pop in and you share and you comment, or if you've got questions or things that we can deal with, feel free. People are starting to appear now. That's good. Obviously, some things, the algorithm is doing its job. Someone's getting some notifications and joining, which is great. So good. Thank you for coming and speak to us. So for those of you who don't know, and I think actually everyone who I can see is on probably does know, but I am Heather Stanford, and I am the owner of the group, and I'm also the owner of Stanford Gould and Stanford Gould Online Limited, and I am the legal fairy godmother to the wedding industry, apparently. One of my clients called me this quite recently. I thought that's a great handle. I'm going to go with that, and that's how we're going to run. So my job is to make the complex, the tedious, the difficult, the not massively creative but utterly essential, easier to digest, easier to manage, as simple as it can be, bearing in mind what I've said about it being complex, and affordable for people in the wedding industry primarily, which is what this group is specifically tailored towards, but I do that for lots of small businesses and lots of different sectors. But we're going to talk in this group really about wedding suppliers. 50 people in this group, which is great, and we've got planners and stylists and mooers and hairdressers and printers and hire people and DJs and all sorts of people, which is great because those are exactly the people that we're aiming this at. So we spoke on Monday about why it's so essential to have a client contract. And if you missed that, if you just go back into the group, you can see a replay of that. Watch it. That's your homework. Because obviously you've got nothing better to do on a Wednesday than supply goods or services. to customers, you've really got to have something in writing which sets out what your terms are, how you're going to do it. And what I usually say to people is the best way to do this, and the simplest way to do this, is to have what you might describe as a proposal document, and it'll be an email which sets out specifically what you're going to do, prices, the people you're talking to, the proposal of work, and sitting alongside that, you have a standard set of terms and conditions which deal with things like when they pay, how they pay, what happens if they want to cancel, is there a deposit, limiting your liability, and so on. That terms and conditions document should be the same every single time you send it out to someone. But the bespoke proposal can be exactly that. You can vary your price, you can vary your timescale. Providing goods and or services to your customers, you need insurance. I am not an insurance broker, as I said before. I tend to refer people to a trusted contact for that. But in broad terms, you need insurance to make sure that if anything you do causes death or serious injury, you're covered. And if you give advice in the broadest sense of that word, you may also need indemnity insurance. But having insurance and having adequate insurance that covers you for the things that you do in the places that you do them, I would say utterly essential. Some people buy that insurance directly from internet purchasing, and others go through a broker. I personally would always advise going through a broker because they check what you do, how you do it, and they ensure that the product that you buy is fit for purpose, covers you for all your activities. Very often when you purchase directly, that insurance company doesn't give you advice about what you do and whether or not the product that they sell you is correct. It has a technical phrase, an unadvised sale or an advised sale. I will not get into the detail of that. But insurance, the other thing, and insurance ties in with terms because you want to say in your terms what your limits of insurance are. That's quite helpful. The third thing is, I'm afraid, compliance. My favourite subject, GDPR. Your terms need to deal with your GDPR compliance questions. Now, this morning I spoke to a new client who I'm doing some terms for, and I said to her, have you got a website? Where's your privacy policy? No sign of anything to do with GDPR. And this is someone who works in a marketing role, who will have access to client lists, who will have access to invite people to events. Not only is she dealing with personal data in the course of running her business, but she's dealing with other people's personal data for the events and the activities that she is engaged to produce. And she's not done anything about GDPR. There are some really, really simple, quick wins that you can do to get on that page. We will do a live about those another time, but if you hop onto the Stanford Gould business page, you will see some other live videos that I've done there, talking a lot. Some will say too much about GDPR. Pop on and have a look. That will give you some pointers. But that's the third element of this. So sort of a triumvirate, a three-pronged base for your business. That's probably a really rude signal in sign language. I hope it isn't. So 1 is your contract, 2 is your insurance, 3 is questions of compliance and particularly GDPR. You get those 3 things in order at the base of your business when you start, then the rest of it, I promise you, will be easier. I will not ever promise people that you do all those things and you'll never have an issue, because that's just nonsense. But at least if you've got those things in place, you've got some protection for yourself, some protection for your clients, some protection for your business. And in this context, and this is, I think, key, most of you guys and most of the people that I do work with are sole traders. They are non-incorporated businesses. They are not limited companies. They trade as whatever their trading name is, as I used to do. So when I set up, I was me trading as Stanford Gould. I was unincorporated. I was a sole trader. There are complex and lengthy reasons why one might trade as a self-trader, trade as a sole trader, or become limited, usually around accountancy questions and income questions. But one of the big issues here is that if you are a sole trader, you have no limit to your personal liability if your business cocks up, gets into a mess, does something wrong. You are your business. You are therefore also liable for your business and its activity. And if you haven't got a contract which limits that as far as it's legally possible to do that, and you have insurance which sits behind that, which will pay out in the event of your business cocking it up or getting into a mess, or failing to do what it's promised to do, then it's you and your assets that are on the line. It's your house. It's your car. It's your flat screen telly. It's your things that would potentially be available to pay a claim. So again, for most people in this group, you'll be sole traders, not limited entities. You are your business. Make sure that you've got these things in place and that you are protecting you and your assets as far as you can, contractually, from an insurance perspective and from a compliance perspective. So that's my little spiel about when you need some terms as a business. Now, the second half of this is going to be, well, let's assume that you've taken my advice, more of which tomorrow, and you've got these things in place. And you've got this shiny terms and conditions document, contract document, and you've got your insurance is hot off the press with the policy schedule. You've got your GDPR stuff on your website. You are good to go. Customer rocks up. Right, how do I tell them what's in this stuff? How do I broach the question of a client contract? When do I do that? And what do I do if they flip and run a mile? Because that's a problem, isn't it? That is a genuine issue, people. I've had clients who've said, I've said to my customer, would you sign our terms? And I've never heard from them again, and they've just got a bit scared off. I said on Monday, and I will say it again, do not be afraid to produce a contract to a client to sign if you are agreeing to provide them with goods and services. It's the most expensive day of their lives, or at least one of them. You should be professional. You should turn up looking right. See video previously about this. However, that does not mean rocking up with something utterly terrifying, this thick, 55 copies of it, sign here in blood, please. You want something sensible, but you want something proportionate. And we're going to talk about what the options are on this topic tomorrow. And when you've got that contract, you want to be able to use it in a sensible way with clients so that when someone says, Heather, I'd be really interested in getting you to quote to provide me with a set of bespoke terms and conditions, I say, I'd be absolutely delighted. Here's my quote, bespoke proposal, email. I will do A, you will pay me B, I will do it in this time frame. Here are the other special issues we've talked about on the phone. Bespoke proposal. And here, ladies and gentlemen, in a PDF format, hopefully, that you've sparkled and made lovely and put your name on and your logo and made it to your font and looks like yours. That's your standard set of terms and conditions. And this proposal is sent subject to those conditions. So the two documents working together create your client contract. And I suggest when you quote to somebody, when someone says, I'm interested in what you do, tell me about what you do. It is a fine line, isn't it? Because if you immediately send them your terms and conditions, they can go, oh, bloody hell, that's a bit hardcore. I don't know whether I want to do that. You want to have a chat. You want to bring them in. You want to talk to them about what you can do and whether or not you're right for them and they're right for you and whether you want the job. But once you start to talk about prices, once you start to talk about availability, once you start to get to a point where you're actually saying, well, yeah, in this scenario, this isn't just what we could do, but this is actually what you want me to do, then I think you've got to have that contractual structure. And you must send it when you are in that stage of the process. Because if they say, oh, really, yeah, I really like that contract idea, Heather, really liking the price, we'll go with that. Could you do it in 2 weeks? And you say yes, without having sent them your terms. Those terms are not incorporated into that contract. Now I am massively oversimplifying this. This is what you learn in year 1 contract law of a law degree, and its technical phrase is offer, acceptance, and consideration. There are other things. If there are any lawyers watching this going, that's not just what you need for a contract. No, I know that, but we're simplifying it for these purposes. You need an offer, you need acceptance, and you need consideration. And once those things all come together, you've formed a contract which is legally enforceable and binding on everybody. Now, if you have told your customer, I will create your contract for £5,000, can I just add that's not my price point, but for this example, we'll just go with that. I will create your contract, it will cost you £5,000, I'll do it by a week on Friday, and they say, thanks Heather, crack on, here's our details, please do. Your contract is formed. There is no point in then sending them your terms and conditions, because it's not incorporated into the contract. Whereas if I say to the customer, lovely to chat to you this morning, I'd be delighted to do your contract terms, it's going to cost £5,000 and I can have it to you by a week on Friday. Attached to my terms and conditions, do let me know if this is of interest, or words to that effect. And then they say, yes please, we'd love you to do that, crack on. Then the contract is formed, the terms and conditions form part of it, and the acceptance, which is the sort of the last bit, if you like, of the arrangement, comes after they've seen the terms. So it's all incorporated into the agreement. Now, as I said, I am massively simplifying what is an extremely complicated legal premise, and there is literally hundreds and hundreds of cases that have been in front of judges because that really simple description that I given you has all sorts of nuanced questions about whether or not it arrived and when it arrived and how it arrived and whether people saw the right version and all sorts of nonsense. But you need a process by which you understand that at the point when you are really saying to the customer, here's what we do, you need that contractual piece in place. It needs to sit in front of your insurance, which should be in place anytime, and your GDPR compliance, which is telling those people who come to you how you're going to use that data. All three things are connected. And so when they say, yes, please, they've got all of those pieces of information and you have incorporated them all into the contract. Now, as I said, hugely complex, hugely prone to error. I see lots and lots of people who do not get this right, who do not get the process right, and it can be very, very difficult to know when to pitch in with this stuff. I understand that. I do understand that. But if you work out the process and you get it right, you are going to be protecting your business, you're protecting your personal assets, you're certainly protecting your reputation. And we all want an industry, a wedding industry, which has a good reputation for service, continues to create incredibly creative, amazing products and services that brides and grooms, or grooms and grooms, or brides and brides love and want to recommend and tell people about. But we need to do it within a structure, and of course, because I'm a lawyer, I think you need to do it within a legal structure. If you asked a health and safety advisor, they'd probably say needs to do it with health and safety structure in mind. If you asked an employment lawyer, they would say you need to think about what your HR structure is. These are all important bits. But what we do is contractual, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, those are my top tips for tonight. So we've briefly talked about your business. When do you need some terms? When do you start to get some? And we've talked about when you've got them, how you introduce them to your customer. Tomorrow, we are back at 6:30, and we're going to be talking about how you get some terms. So I'm going to talk very candidly about what the options are out there, how good I think they are. This is just my view, but here's some options. What the budget for those options are. So if you're saying, well, look, Heather, I'd love to do all this, but I've got 15 pence in my business bank account. What the bloomin' heck can I do with that? I can't guarantee I can give you an option that'll work for 15p. But we're going to talk about the price points of some of the products and services that are out there. Some that are, I don't know whether there are any free, but there are free options. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about template options at the lower price point and a much more expensive price point. We'll talk about bespoke options with me, with any number of other contractual and legal sources, and we'll talk about full-service law firms and full-blown solicitors, of which I used to be one, but I'm no longer practicing, so I have to add that in my title. And we'll talk about them and what they do, and why is it different, and why are the price points different, and where do the prices come from? Because lots of these prices are really based around an hourly rate that lawyers charge or think about their time as being of value to their customer, and they translate that into, well, do what a contract looks like, 3 to 4 hours or 6 to 7 hours, and the price is X. So we're going to unpack it a bit tomorrow and talk about prices. And I hope I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what options Stanford Gould Online has. If you want to preempt that, you are very welcome. Come and have a look at the website. But if you want to stay and have a surprise tomorrow with content, come and join us tomorrow, 6:30. We are back here in the semi-darkness of 6:30 on a Wednesday. That's depressing, isn't it, when the nights close? But we shall be back here tomorrow, 6:30. If you have any questions on anything that we talked about, I have talked at you about today, pop them into the feed, or you can DM us directly if you don't want to put it into the public space, as I said yesterday. If you liked this video, if you think this group is quite useful and you've got other people who are in the wedding sector that you know, please invite them. I hope the settings allow that to happen. And come back and see us tomorrow, 6:30, when we shall be talking about the how. Yeah, the how in 70s children's TV speak, of which I am old enough to remember. And almost everybody I can see on this list who's watching is not old enough to remember that, except Margaret, who will remember how. It was about 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon. Another story entirely. Thanks for being with us. I'm wibbling now, so I'm going to stop. Lovely to have you with us. Perhaps see you tomorrow for part 3. Thanks. Good night. Have a good evening.